Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Mike and Tim. What's up, gentlemen?
Hey.
Yo, yo, yo.
Jay is traveling this week, so you got us jabronis, and we might go off the rails a little bit with some competitive stuff, but we'll see.
He says we might go off the rails. be ready for train derailment in T-minus 10 minutes.
Yeah,
That's about right.
we were actually trying to come up with, I think it's going to be better if this is more unscripted. We have some topics that we're going to talk about, but it will be more fun if we go off the rails, I think. So before we do that, though, how about we hit some housekeeping?
Housekeeping!
So if you like this podcast or any of our other content at thefifthtrooper.com, which includes Legion 99, the Fifth Trooper podcast, the Fifth Tile, as well
The High Ground.
The High Ground, is that what your Shatterpoint podcast is? It
is. We debuted our first episode last Friday, so go check that out. Apparently I'm a little rusty on all this podcasting stuff, and I said like a lot that episode, and I got chastised pretty hard for it. So
okay,
I'm gonna try to not do that today.
Chastised pretty hard. That's just the internet.
Yeah, it is. I'm okay with it, but it's one of those things. One of the guys, like he clipped like 30 seconds, and like in that 30 seconds I said it 17 times.
You just said it about 5 times.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. It's been a while, and I'm like out of practice.
Yep, that's
again
fair.
There's another one. So we're gonna try to not do that. No promises. Sorry, team.
Right. Well, so that's the High Ground. Of course, we have various blog articles about Legion and Shatterpoint and other things occasionally on thefifthtrooper.com/blog. If you like any of that content, you can support our Patreon at patreon.com/thefifthtrooper. You can also check out our web store. We do sell Legion stuff. Promo code SWLegion, I think.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
It's like an 80% chance that's right. 80% chance to get 10% off. So anyway, check that out. All right. Should we get into our main topic?
Get ready for advanced tactics.
All right. So we're going to talk actually about 2 things today. The first is going to be, I think, relatively quick, but we got a listener request to talk about preparing for tournaments. So basically, if you're going to your first tournament, what considerations do you have? What should you do? What should you pack, etc.?
You're talking like, are we talking first tournament ever?
No, I'm talking about a convention tournament, not like a local one-day tournament.
A travel tournament.
Okay. We're getting on a plane. We're going to do a thing.
Yeah, we're in a car.
We're staying
like
for a couple.
Or like long drive or whatever.
Yeah, non-local.
Day
or
two,
train.
2 day sort of thing.
2 day. Yeah, we'll say 2-day tournament. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Cool.
I would say, I think the biggest thing is, if it's your first time ever going to one, make sure you set your goals right, or have your expectations set correctly. I think would be my biggest thing. Depending on the size of it, don't go with like the aim that like you're going to win the whole thing on the first outing. Your aim should be to have fun, to learn a bit, to meet some cool new people. I think one of the biggest things for me is like, I like winning. It's like where a lot of my fun comes from. And if I like lose the first game of a tournament, my experience goes south very quickly, as far as how much I enjoy it. So I think I would recommend just kind of keeping an open, palette as to how you're viewing your expectations of it.
Yep. For me, like the only difference between a tournament and like a local game night is like how many games you're playing and for how long. So I mean, presuming you're someone who's played the game for a little while and trying to play a first tournament and just gonna get into that, you just need to be able to set yourself up for like play your game, right? Because a lot of people's first tournament, if they don't have other things set up properly, then the game is gonna suffer because they're worried about other stuff. So that's like making sure you have travel solution and be able to get your minis and tokens out quickly. Make sure that you're like have snacks, have breakfast, whatever. Keep your
Snacks.
keep your body itself functioning properly, however that need whatever you need to do that for the day. But snacks and like drink water is important. And then also like if we're going to a 2-day tournament, have fun in that like don't just treat the like games itself as the like only thing you're doing there. Talk to people, say hi, like go to these things, try to be social. If being social isn't your thing, to be fair enough, but like often these tournaments have a like social evening event or a hangout or like just go grab some pizza with like some of your opponents or whatever. Just try to like reach out and talk to people because that's why we do these things is to like play games with people and then incorporating that is just like have good times with people.
Yeah, don't bring Cheetos,
Yeah.
Yes.
please.
I will say that I actually haven't had any issues with it recently, since at least COVID, but there's definitely like some etiquette around like bringing food to the table and like, we're playing with nice stuff. Don't, bring greasy, gross food and just put your Mountain Dew that's like in a cup that doesn't have a cap on it on the table, like I'll never forget. I went to it's not wargaming, but a Magic tournament one time, and somebody like put like an open like thing of soda on the table, and it got knocked and like just like soaked this guy's like $700 deck. It was double sleeved, but
Okay, I was gonna say, did you have sleeves?
But sleeves only do so much protection against the menace that is the soda.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would be careful with that. Make sure you bring snacks that you like, but also I mean, Kyle has always got like 20 Cliff bars on him. I when I need snacks in a tournament, I know where to go. This man right here, I guess, right
Yep.
here.
Just make friends with people and they'll hand you stuff. It's great.
Yeah.
But also about drinks, like a lot of tournaments, there's not a lot of space. I often put my like drink on the ground.
Yep.
Make
Right,
sure it's
like-
got some kind of cap on it.
Yeah, like if I have a cap, then I'm not too worried about it. But if it's like, a cup or a can or whatever, and there isn't enough room, I just put it on the ground or like put it on a chair. That's
Yep.
not as good, but like
It's easy to knock them.
know thyself too, right? If you're someone who knocks stuff over all the time, be conscious of that. I always make sure like I tend to knock stuff, so I tend to like at minimum put my stuff way off to the edge that like isn't being played on. You can always see like parts of the battlefield that aren't being used very much. Those are great places to put like spare dice or like whatever in a little corner of the battlefield that's not being used. So because these conventions often there isn't a ton of space to put stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I spilled coffee on some miniatures once. That was luckily they
man.
were mine, so
There you go.
it was slightly less bad, but and they were B1s, so they were already like brown colored.
Oh, that was just
Um,
extra.
It was extra
That wasn't
shade.
that wasn't a spill. That was a purposeful
A wash.
hobby. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was an intentional stain.
They just need a little extra wash. Yeah,
It's like the dip, people dip their yeah.
Yeah, so that was, I kind of just rolled with it. Like I was in the middle of a game, so it's not like I could go rinse them off anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say as far as snacks and drinks and stuff are concerned, make sure that granola bars are great because you can eat them in the wrapper.
Yep.
Usually, and you won't get your hands messy. And then any sort of drink, make sure you have like water is obviously great because if water spills, it's not that big of a deal usually, but also generally if you have a water bottle with like a top that you can close, or something like that. And if it spills, it's not gonna go all over the place. If you have something like coffee, I really like those Contigo mugs.
Mhm.
The ones that have like
Tigo. I'm not a
this
coffee guy,
podcast.
so
Okay, this podcast not brought to you by Contigo, but
Hit us
they're
up.
the ones that have that little button on the side and they're like vacuum sealed, so you can like turn them upside down and flip them around and like
Yeah.
throw them in the air and the coffee doesn't come out. So which is great because I have kids, so I've also learned how important it is to make sure that like
that's fair.
yeah.
That's fair.
So yeah, I would say make sure that you are prepared to play quickly, because tournament games are timed, obviously. Now, most of them don't have like chess clocks per se, but as a courtesy to your opponent, you should still make sure that you can like reliably finish a game in 2.5 hours. A lot of people are like, what baseline level of experience do I need to show up to a tournament? And the short answer is technically you just need to be able to like play the game, right? But I think a more accurate answer, and I'm going to steal this one from Zeus Juice because he's the one that posted this, but
That's Matt Bronson for
Matt Bronson,
anybody.
yeah, from Bombad Generals, is a good way to know if you have enough experience to go to a tournament and like not be essentially like a liability for your opponent, is if you can consistently finish the game, finish a full 6-turn game in less than 2.5 hours. If you can't do that yet, then you probably need some more reps before you go to a tournament. Now, some people can do that in as little as like 3 or 4 games,
Some people can't do it in 100.
Also true. And that's why I don't want to get on the chess clock soapbox, but that's why I feel like all
Chess
post-cut
looks great.
chess
Yep.
clocks are great.
Agreed.
You can also practice a lot. Like, so at my locals, like we run our game nights to quote tournament standard. Now that doesn't mean I'm timing anyone, and people can do their own games, but in general, like I'm there, I'm answering those questions as if I'm a tournament judge, blah blah blah, right? And we're still having fun, and we're still being casual. Oh, you bumped that, whatever, no problem. But it meant like I had a few people who we went down to Grand Forks to a tournament, and they were a little bit stressed, like, oh, it was my first tournament, how's it going to be? And at the end of the day, they're like, actually, that wasn't bad because we just played 3 games like we usually do. So especially if you're from a community or just group of friends or whatever that doesn't play quote tournament standard games very often, if you're going to a big tournament, try to play a few before you'd go, because that way you're just a little bit more used to that ebb and flow of how things work.
I think
And to put a clock on too.
Yeah, clocks are always good. I think in that vein, while you're practicing, you should make sure you feel rushed. Just as like A, so that you know what it feels like, and B, I think practicing at a higher rate of speed allows you to slow down when you need to. I honestly, at this point, like my least favorite thing about playing Legion competitively is when I get a slow opponent.
It's brutal.
I'm
with you on that.
It's actually the worst. And that's not to say that like it doesn't really happen that often. Like even with newer people, like I generally can play fast enough that like we get to turn 6. But like I definitely, as someone who like shows up to tournaments a lot, if we don't get to turn 6 on a game, like I'm not happy. And not that you're responsible for your opponent's happiness, because you're not. But it is I think helpful to make sure that it, tournaments are run well. That's the thing.
When you're playing, you should always be doing something. In that, playing Legion, there's really not a lot of time where you should be sitting and thinking. I mean, there are big decisions. Take a second, take a breath. And especially if you've been playing quick, you have that little bit of extra time. You can whatever. But especially for earlier turns or things that aren't that momentous, you shouldn't be sitting there and thinking about something. You should always be doing something. And that could even be like, oh, I have to side between 2 command cards. Instead of just sitting there thinking, maybe measure it. Maybe that'll help, right? Inform your decision, right? You should always be doing stuff to make your decisions go faster.
Yeah, I think Tim, our game at LVO was actually like a pretty good example of like a game that was measured in pace and like we played, I think, pretty fast turns 1 through 5. And then
Yeah.
turn 6 was like half the game, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and one of the things about Legion is that when you're playing a competitive game, that's often the case, is that the game slows down in the final turn, where things are narrowing and decision trees are getting more complicated, and in that, like, paths are closing because they literally just result in defeat, and you've got to figure out which doors are shut and which ones are still open. And navigating that in some like game setups is extremely complicated, and like the whole like turns 1 through 5 is just a road to get there, at least in the super fun, really grindy, crunchy games that I think the three of us love a lot, where people aren't just getting tabled completely.
Yeah. If the game's over by turn 3, it was probably not a fun game. It definitely was not a fun game for one person, and it probably was not a fun game for either player.
Agreed.
So yeah, Legion is best when Legion is close. So, but yeah, that's a long way of saying just make sure that you are prepared to play quickly enough. And that doesn't mean you need to be rushing, but quickly enough to finish a game consistently in 2.5 hours.
Yeah. And I do think, Tim, you pointed out earlier, like having all of your I think it was you that's like ways to like get to and from each game, like on trays and stuff. That is such a game changer. I think if you can do anything, I gotta be honest, we went to Top Deck Games where I won my Worlds invite. They had like a literal, like one of those push carts for everyone there.
Yep.
Wow.
Those are great.
Amazing.
There were like 32 people at this tournament, and there were like 32 of these push carts. They just had a billion of them. I've never had a push cart before where you just like put your models on it and you just like push it to the next game, and then you don't like have to get all your stuff out again. Oh my God.
It's great. It's great for 2 reasons. The first is you don't have to get anything out. The second is that it's like extra table space. You know?
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
It
those
was
things are
incredible.
great. Those things are great.
Actually incredible. I like went to lunch. I got back like 5 minutes late because like we were taking a long time ordering stuff, and I still like got to my game on time and was like setting up and everything, just because I just grabbed my cart and moved it over to the next table. You know,
I mean, it can be simple. Like the last few, like I have my foam tournament carrying case, and my like between table transportation method is I just place all the units in my case, but on top of all the foam. Right, so I have like a flat piece of foam that covers it all up, and I just use that as a tray basically in my tournament bag, and go between. And it can be as simple as that. Like it also, like if you have a like small baking tray or like the top of a Tupperware container, but something flat to be able to just put stuff on is amazing.
yeah.
Yep. Super helpful. I like magnetic stuff personally.
Yeah, that's the
I have a
standard.
Yeah, I have a magnetic case. All my units have washers on the bottom so they can stick to the magnetic sheets that are on the bottom of the case. So I've got all my minis in one tray, layer, whatever you want to call it, and then I've got all my tokens and stuff in another. So I just take out my 2 trays, I set them on a table, and boom, I'm done.
Yep.
And the magnetic stuff is awesome because you don't have to, like, I used to use foam and just pulling stuff out, like it would catch.
It rubs paint off.
It rubs paint off. Yeah.
The one thing I see too that I think is a little like, so a lot of people have, you know, solutions for getting their cards out quick, right? Like basically like binder sheets or whatever.
I'm a weird.
Yeah, that's fair. For me, I'm weird in that I have my cards in a stack and I just lay them out, but I get my minis out quickly. And I think I see there are people who have really quick ways of getting their cards out, but the minis take forever. And out of the 2 things, the thing that's actually quicker to do, even with no organization at all, is the cards. So if you're gonna invest or think about one of those 2 things, think about minis first and cards second.
Yeah.
And cards are easier to do kind of just as you're going.
Yeah.
Whereas like
100%.
it's hard to start deploying if you don't have any minis on the table or ready to put on the table.
Yep.
Obviously, like if you're a blue player, you're gonna need your battle cards, but you don't. Like I honestly, other than flip cards, I don't even take my cards out anymore.
Yeah, I don't either.
I have my cards for my army in a Ziploc bag in a stack, because you're
Yep.
required to have them. And if my opponent or a judge wants to see them, they're there. But and then I have my flip cards in a separate tiny little Ziploc with my command cards and my battle cards.
Yep. Anything
I-
that exhausts or whatever goes in that little bag.
Yep. So I pull out my command cards, I pull out my little exhaust cards. That's the only cards that I need on the table most of the time. And then you're good. Yeah, I don't clearly if you're newer, you're probably gonna need some cards because you won't have all that stuff memorized. But if you've been playing stuff extensively and you've got all the stats and keywords and stuff for your units just in your head, which if you have enough reps, you will. I think it's totally fine to just have your cards available, but you don't need to put out every single card on the table.
There are some people that are really weird about that. My first question every game is, do you want me to get my cards out?
Yeah, and I get too, if your opponent also doesn't have everything memorized, it's kind of a courtesy to them to make sure that they can visually inspect what your units do and stuff without having to ask you, which is great.
Yeah.
And if that's the reason they want my cards out on the table, that's totally fine. I completely understand that. But
You can also have a lead a Legion
A
HQ
printout.
link ready to go.
Yeah.
Well, a
Mhm.
printout, or I often just
Or a
have
link. Yeah.
the link ready to go, and then I can send it to them by phone or whatever. Because then they can also pull the cards up themselves. Or if you're playing one of these bigger tournaments, they're often on Game Up Like Now, which has the lists able to view anyway. So.
Yep.
But a printout also is I always have a printout. It's just good to have.
Yeah, I think it's great to just have a physical printed list too for your opponent.
Yep.
So that you can just hand it to them. I mean, I know that with Game Uplink, it's easy to just look at the list in there, but sometimes phone service is weird, or maybe somebody's phone died or something. I always bring a physical copy of a list.
Yeah. Yep.
So.
Physical copy, and then also a pen. Because if you often because if you have a physical copy, you also have a back of a page that you can write stuff down on. And often there's weird things you need to write down during tournaments. So.
Yeah, which is allowed now. It used to not be allowed to take
Yeah.
notes, but now you can do that. So.
I mean, but even outside of games, occasionally you have to write down a food order for someone to take, or right,
Okay.
there's a lot of reasons why you need to jot something down, and if you have a printout, you have a piece of paper, so just put a pen in. I just have a pen in my tournament bag all the time, and
got to be able to sign those autographs, Tim. Okay.
Those require Sharpies.
Usually, not always, but yeah.
Not always, but
all right.
Are we successfully off the rails?
Yeah, I think so.
We're on autographs. We're off the rails.
Okay.
I
don't know if that was 10 minutes, but it was probably close.
It was more, I think.
That was more.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, the horror. We went over time. Shocking.
Yeah. All right. So the other thing we wanted to talk about is we had a lot of people asking about your 501st list, Mike.
Yeah, apparently I shorted everybody last week when I didn't talk about it more.
Yeah.
That the list that haunts my nightmares.
Yeah, you're the from LVO.
Actually, it's not even a list that happens to my nerves. It's one of my stupid plays, but whatever.
You should have won that game. You should have won that game.
Tim, for those that don't know, LVO was the three of us were three of the top
we were
four
3 of the top
in
4.
LVO, and Evan Paul, are also from Fifth Reaver was the other 4th. You guys played each other in the top 4 at LVO, and then obviously Mike won that game, and then we played in the final.
Also, at LVO, I was on stream twice during 2 of the craziest games that were not on the stream table. I played 2 of the most boring, very technical but boring to watch games on stream. While, I think one time it was Kyle, you were beating Dave Grant.
Yeah.
And then the other game was you and Evan having a Blizzard off to the death match.
Yep.
Whereas my 2 games on stream were, okay, I move an inch, shoot, aim dodge.
Yeah. All right.
Clone, some exciting clone on clone
Yeah,
action. Yeah.
There were a lot of dodges
there was
taken.
a lot,
Yeah.
of
Not,
dodge tokens.
not a lot of defense dice rolled.
Nope. Until the end when it was like, here, 14 dice, eat it.
Yeah. Yes.
Hmm. Yeah, those fire supports. You guys are making me want to play clones now.
It's fun.
All right. So we're going to actually use this kind of as a gateway too, to just talk about list building generally, and more specifically, like if you want to do a specific concept, how do you, whether you want to use a specific unit, whether you want to go with a particular theme, how do you like run with that theme and then turn it into a competitive list? Because it is very possible in Legion. You know, there's several different ways to build lists. One of them is to just go like figure out what people are playing that looks good and copy those, which I guess
The net decking.
yeah, net decking. I try not to do that simply because
Oh, come on. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Let's be a little bit
Okay.
hard.
I said I try not to do that. I didn't say I never do that.
He
But-
only plays the good thing to prove they're good.
But
Okay.
also, just for the history record, I think I was the first one to actually win something with Blizzard. So, if you're copying yourself, is it
yeah.
net decking?
No, I don't know.
No.
I played the fifth.
Yeah, I feel like this question's a trap.
I know. Yeah. Anyway, the reason that I prefer not to do that, sometimes a list is just so good, that that's
Blizzard.
like Blizzard's an example. Rex clone gun line back when token sharing thing was another example where like you could try and counter that, but it's just even though it's the thing that everyone is expecting, it's probably still just better to do that. But I think in a healthier, and that is why I played Blizzard for 3 tournaments in a row.
And also on that, especially with lists that are powerful but not like impossible to beat. If you are copying someone and going to a big tournament, are you going to be better than the person you're copying at that list, right?
Right.
Like a lot of these lists that are good but not unbeatable, are you going to be like, right? Like, I mean, and I've had this too, where it's like, well, that is a good list, but I need to keep playing the thing I'm playing because I'm not going to have enough practice to, if I face a mirror or just like in general, I'm not going to have enough with this specific list to beat people who've practiced with it more. So
Yeah, and generally too, unless it's just like so good that it doesn't matter. If you're bringing if you're net decking, then you're probably bringing the thing that everyone else is expecting to see. And if you're bringing the thing that everyone else is expecting to see, then in theory, they're going to be building in counters to that list. So it's much better to come up with your own concept for what you think is good that may not be the obvious popular thing, assuming that it's actually good and not just you know, like using a bunch of bad units. But it's much better to try and counter the meta from an effectiveness perspective, not just I want to be a hipster perspective, than it is to copy the meta generally.
or at least like side hill it, right? Go laterally, where you're sort of like not really,
you're taking some elements from those popular things and then you're making your own twist on it that might be unexpected or something. So
So this is a little bit of a tangent already, but I actually like I'm listening to you guys talk about like the meta and like the top tier lists and like countering things. One of the things that I have learned, I think, in the past 2 years is that I think all of those things are a little overrated.
okay, go on.
I think I on this podcast have talked about it a lot from like just kind of like building towards the meta and figuring out what to counter and what other people are going to be playing. And I think one of my like post-COVID revelations has been I don't really think that's as useful all the time as we like to think it is. For instance, I did that for Worlds, and it screwed me. Screwed me really hard. I definitely feel like my run at Worlds was way subpar to what it could have been, because I kneecapped myself trying to counter the meta, and I didn't run into a single meta list in the traditional fashion. And this was Worlds. This was not like, this wasn't Nova or a local, or like, this was where people should have been doing that. And that's not to say that people didn't, because there were medalists that showed up. But I mean, I played 8 games, which was a lot. I think it was 8. I don't know, maybe it was like it was a lot of games. And I built for Dark Troopers, and I didn't have to play them at all, and my list was nerfed in every other matchup where I needed to not be nerfed.
I mean, so I also think when I hear countering the meta, I also like, because there's that straight countering the meta, I'm going to take 6 HH12s, which is quite overblown. Whereas for my Worlds list, I took my LVO list and added a rocket launcher and took out a whatever, right? I like to talk about having a plan for the meta, not countering it, right? Because if I did not make that change, like I played 2 different Dark Trooper lists, I would have lost at least one of those games for sure, right? So that was a good change. Now, if I would have put 2 rocket launchers in my list, which I was advised to do,
I did that. I put 2 rockets in my list.
I wouldn't have done as well. So the 2 rocket launchers would have been the quote countering the meta, whereas I think I did a little bit more of plan for the meta.
Yeah, it was a hedge for sure. I guess I just want to kind of make sure that we're opening this conversation with what I think is contextually just kind of important about Legion. I think in general, this is not Magic. This is not, I mean, I suspect I don't play competitive 40K, so I don't know what competitive 40K looks like. But I feel like there's these games.
Don't get me started.
Okay, sure.
It's a bunch of scowls.
But I feel like there's these games that have been established for like a very long time, where people really grind the numbers, and that's not to say that we don't, because I think there are a lot of people out there that do grind the numbers. But I think that we are still a little bit in our infancy as a community, or like around the idea of bringing the best thing to a tournament every time. And I think that it allows us to have conversations about playing things that you enjoy and getting really, really, really good at playing those things. And you can pretty much, you can take a good list that you have built around a theme and a concept, and that you've put reps in on, and you can beat Blizzard with that list. You can beat old Blizzard with that list if you're good enough with it against an average player. You're not going to beat Kyle with Blizzard. It just, but that should not be your goal.
Lila did.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like there are lists out there. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it shouldn't be like that should not be your expectation. Right.
Yeah, that's fair.
And
I mean,
but you probably don't need to if you're not going to whatever, the world championships.
Yes.
Right.
And Lila's list was also a great example of like, if you take something that no one is thinking of, or at least no one's crazy enough to take it, then people aren't going to have a plan for it.
Yep.
Yeah, and I was generally familiar with her list by virtue of editing AJ's blog articles, because he writes a lot about the tournament scene in the UK. And I distinctly remember, I don't know if it was a month or 2 before Worlds, but I was editing one of such articles, and she did well in one of those tournaments, and I was reading about it, and I was like, oof, man, I really hope that I don't have to deal with that at Worlds. Um, and then it was
Womp womp.
yeah, I think it was round 3 on day 2. Somebody walked.
Yep.
It was before the matchups were even posted. Somebody walked over to me. They're like, "You're on stream. You're playing Lila," and I was like, "Damn it!" Like, can I literally anyone else? Can I have like and yeah, and it, interestingly, I think whether Lila did this intentionally or not, she built a great Blizzard counter in that list because one thing that Blizzard doesn't have is long range pierce, and there's really only one thing that Black Sun don't like, and that's long range pierce.
I don't even think, as someone who's played a lot of long range pierce against that list, I don't even think it's that good.
Yeah,
to counter it with. Like you've got a bunch of units that are like very fragile if that's what you've got for the most part. And like
Black Sun don't really care how fragile a unit is though, because everything is fragile against Black Sun.
I guess my point is that like you're gonna maybe kill like 1 or 2 of their units before they get to you, and then they're just gonna start deleting things still. Like the Pierce, I think, is a little overvalued.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we've gone way off topic here from 501st.
Sure. I guess.
Oh yeah, that's where we started.
Yes, 501st.
This is a long way of saying, what do you do if you have a specific theme that you want to go for or unit that you want to use? How do you called this quote unquote brewing?
Yeah.
But like, how do you build a list from an idea rather than trying to just be like, what's good and take that?
So I think where I started, and I guess I'll talk a little bit about my journey here in the 501st land, all the way to it's the best GAR list that exists, and Tim can refute that. We can have a conversation about it.
Okay.
Hashtag Worlds, baby.
Hashtag Worlds. I didn't play 501st at Worlds. I should.
That's fair. That's true, actually.
Yeah, that's very true.
And let's just remember the last game we played.
Yeah, right. Who won the 501st versus normal GAR list matchup at LVO?
Yeah.
Well, I definitely lost. My dumb brain lost.
Yeah.
But I think the first thing that I set out to at LVO, and I guess this kind of goes back to like preparing for tournaments and stuff, was I had a flight set up to LVO. I had bought tickets like a year in advance because you kind of have to do that for LVO because it sells out very quickly. And I already had my Worlds invite, and I was like, I'm kind of just going for fun. This is just me going to Vegas and having a good time. There's no pressure, nothing on the line really. How can I make this fun? And I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring the thing that everybody thinks sucks, and I'm going to see what I can do with it. And so I kind of messed around with 501st. And I think this is kind of where you start in any kind of list building scenario. You're like, okay, this thing is fun, whether it's a battle force or a unit, let's say Tauntauns or I don't know, whatever. In this case, I was like, I want to play a bunch of full arcs. That's where I started with the Republic. That's where I kind of wanted to do. I always like the models. I think they're really cool. Kyle painted them for me like I guess 3 years ago now, and I never actually put them on the table because they got nerfed by the time we were done.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to do this. I'm going to put these things on the table. And so I think like everyone else before LVO, I was like, Anakin, there's no way Anakin's good in the 501st list. It's impossible. He's trash. He's too expensive to put in a 501st list with a bunch of other expensive things. It's not a thing you can do. So I started I was like, all right, well, I started to put together a bunch of like lists, and I was like, man, Rex is kind of really bad. It's the bad thing, you know? And I started playing around with it, and I just started building different lists. And we had just had the, what was it? The rules errata, like a month
the
earlier.
BRB.
Yeah. With the pass mechanic. Right. Like,
Yep.
okay. Pass mechanic. Maybe I can cut an activation. Maybe that's the thing I can do, right? Because we've been living in a world where 10 activations is the norm. An 8 activation list was crazy.
Yep.
It was just like not a thing you could do. It's like, all right, maybe I can make, let's shove Anakin in there. We know Anakin's good.
Yep.
Right. So I think the first thing when you're kind of like figuring all this stuff out is you figure out your theme, and then you're like, okay, build like 12 different lists. See which ones stick out, which ones you like the most, and then you kind of like want to take advantage of things that people haven't thought of before, right? And not that I was the only one that thought about the pass mechanic at LVO, because I certainly was not. There was a lot of low activation lists, which turns out makes taking a low activation list better.
Yeah, when you've got 8, like,
Okay.
and your opponent has a 9 or 7, it's
You're like,
less of a big deal to have 8.
you're like, oh, great. I think there were very few games where I actually played people that were like a 10 activations or above that at LVO. Tim, how many were you playing? Were you on 9?
9.
Yeah. But like all, I feel like if you would look at the statistics for those lists, and we're at that point, you're like breaking into a new meta, which is like with all the rules changes and stuff. And we're kind of breaking into a new meta right now with all the points adjustments.
Yeah.
So it's not the same exactly because the rules haven't changed, but same general premise.
Yeah.
The terrain has shifted. I'm like, okay, things have changed. That means the variables in play are different. So let's cut an activation, throw Anakin in there, see what happens. It's like, all right, so I've got all these clones. They died at Pierce. How do we solve that? Barrier. Oh my God.
Barry's so good.
Oh my God. I will not play a force user without barrier after playing that list. It's in all of my force user lists. And I think it's one of those things where I just like didn't play with these cards. Because people will tell you that there are better things or they're bad. I don't think anybody said barrier is bad, in fairness. But I think part of this is just like you gotta get your feet wet. You gotta go out there and you actually have to use the stuff that nobody uses. I think Keegan from Legion 99, he was playing what Jin Pathfinders for a while there.
Yeah.
A list that I don't think is very good, but he does well with it because he's got enough reps and he enjoys the list and he's gotten good enough with it that people know what they're doing. So anyhow, I feel like I'm a little bit monologuing. Feel free to jump in here when you guys are ready. So I ended up on Anakin Barrier defensive stance, which was another kind of like did I have offensive push on him? That do you guys remember that?
No.
Okay. That was something I tried as well. Offensive push with Anakin because I was recovering a lot in the first couple turns. And it was like an extra aim to like share because you would get shot.
Yeah.
You'd tap your barrier, you'd activate Anakin, tap offensive push, recover barrier and push, and you got exemplar. So anybody in your army can use the aim token, right?
Yep.
I ended up deciding that was too expensive, but and kind of just cheeky, I guess. But there's like a lot, I don't know. There's like cool things you can do. So anyways, I ended up with Anakin in my 501st list, which if you had asked me 3 months prior, if that was anywhere in the realm of being decent, I would have told you to get out of here. You're crazy. We're playing competitive Legion. That's silly. Don't. And you just got to put this stuff on the table. I think that fundamentally for me, you really just got to figure out the things that people aren't playing, put it on the table, find out if it's good or not for yourself, and then test it. And then make small adjustments. I've made a few adjustments to the list after LVO. And the points have made it a lot easier to do that.
Yeah, how much cheaper is that same list now?
I believe it's roughly 20 points cheaper.
Okay.
It's enough that mortar squad is now a second phase 2 medic squad.
Yeah, that's
and I can put an emergency transponder on Echo, which is probably overkill, but I will say it'll let me completely flip the table in my finals game at Top Tech a couple weeks ago. I had a mortar on one wound, and I was like, I just really need this to die. That guy's gonna take an extra aim, you know. And I
Whereas
don't know.
Transmonder's real good. I like splashed it into a lot of stuff now.
Yeah, and I like playing at 800. It's like how I like to play the game. I still like to play Evaporators, even though people are like really, not as
Yeah.
on it these days. I don't mind playing an even draw game. I did have that come up. I was like, hey.
So, yeah, that's awkward.
It is, but when you've got 4 sniper rifles in your list, it's a little less awkward.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, I don't know where we're headed with this conversation outside of I really think that I would love to see more people put things that are perceived to be bad on the table and just grind the crap out of them. And because I think there's a 501st, there's the Pink Sun list that Lila brought, the UK has just got a bunch of Bruin shenanigans going on with Palpatine, Gav, Vader.
They're weird over there.
They are, but it's cool. And
it is like, I listen to a couple of UK podcasts. It's always hilarious because they talk about stuff and you go like, and it metamorphosizes over time, right? You hear them talk about something, and then 6 months later, something pops out from that conversation that's amazing. Right? They'll be talking about something that's like that, and then they'll say like, that didn't work, and then boop, Pink Suns.
I think they're less afraid to try random stuff.
Oh, they just try whatever. Yeah. They also play a lot of games.
Well, that's part of
A
it.
crazy number of games.
That's part of it.
I will say, and this is, part of my like I have essentially like what is the time limitation, which is that my actual time for Legion games is not unlimited. And I know that's the case with most people, but like I got 3 kids. My oldest kid is 6, so I can't play.
Hey everyone, he's about to give us the excuse as to why he netlists. Get ready.
No, this is not a net listing topic. That's a long way of saying like I'm not one of those people that can play 3 Legion games in a week. When I'm actively prepping for a tournament, I will probably get in 1 a week. Which is enough to like kind of massage and tailor a list concept that you already have in mind, but it's not enough to just like try something new constantly. That doesn't mean that I don't play things that are new to me. I'm also kind of notorious for going completely cold to tournaments and playing a list that I've never played before ever. Yep. So for kind of similar reasons, but that's a long way of saying there are ways, particularly if you have like a good active community to discuss these sorts of things in, the conventional term is theory crafting, but there are ways to kind of like bounce list ideas off people and go through that experimentation process, at least mentally, and kind of save yourself some game time if you're limited on the time. And I definitely do a lot of that. I'm part of several different Discord communities where people do this.
Fifth Trooper's got a Discord community.
We do, which you can be a part of if you subscribe to our, not subscribe, if you join our Patreon, support our Patreon.
Thanks. You're welcome, Jay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in fairness, we do like we've got tons of people in there that post lists for us to look at all the time.
Mm-hmm. One great way to brew lists is see other people's crazy concepts and then massage them in your own image.
Yep.
Right. And I mean, I like it. So it was funny because when we were discussing topics for this, it's like, oh yeah, Tim and Mike, you're both Gar players. It's like, yeah, locally I'm known as a Rebel player because our local scene is fairly new with a lot of newer, more casual players. So I tend not to try to stomp them because that's just mean. So I play a lot of like weird Rebel shenanigans in our local scene. And so it was just a funny heads up. But part of that is my local scene, like they send me lists and here's what I want to play next week. Cool. when people send me lists and I massage them, I try to take all the units they have and just change upgrades, not actually changing units. Occasionally I'll suggest some change to units, right? But like part of that is it's good list building practice to take. These are the units you have to take, put the upgrades on them to make it work. Or take, this you have to take, there's the Legion randomizer, which probably isn't the best way to get competitive lists, but it's a good practice to like, you have to take these things, whatever. But just taking whatever lists and massaging them in your image, right? If you're a more defensive player, taking someone's like pretty aggressive list and just like changing a few upgrades, changing a few units, getting a like more neutral list, or like take a neutral list, make it defensive, or vice versa. Those are all great ways to like just practice list building and seeing what you like.
Well, and that's part of, this is years ago now, but you guys remember the Wookiee bus meta, right?
Yep.
God, yeah.
Well, and what's even more terrifying? He walks in buses.
Yeah, not looking forward to it. But I actually think
we almost made it an episode without talking about Ewoks.
I have 7 boxes on pre-order.
7? Oh man, you're going full
Wow.
crazy.
No. 9 is full.
9 is
Whatever.
Anyway, back in the Wookiees and buses days, apparently what's more terrifying than Wookiees and buses is T-47s and Wookiees. And that was like the thing. And I made the mistake of not acting on this instinct when I went to Lone Star Open that year, which was I think 2021. But after Lone Star Open, I'm like, all right, I'm going to SoCal Open in a couple months. People are still going to be playing this Wookiees and buses thing. What's better than Wookiees and buses? And more specifically, what counters Wookiees and buses? But it's kind of similar. And it turns out the answer is Wookiees and T-47s. You've got your own Wookiees to handle their Wookiees. You probably have more because you haven't paid to transport them. And then you have the T-47s to mulch the buses, because what are T-47s good at? Killing armor, and more specifically, white save armor. So that's like one of those things where it's not a crazy, it's still a W key list, right? It's still a list that has a bunch of ridiculous threats in it. It's just a slight, you just replace the buses with one other thing. You're massaging an existing successful list concept with your own twist.
About the same time too, I took the Wookiees and buses and went shooty Wookiees and buses, because the buses still did their before the activation give out aims. I was like, well, put some dragoning scopes on some shooty Wooks and I'm gonna have a Wookiee gun line. Because it's a similar thing too of like, well, if their Wookiees make it to me, well, shooty Wooks aren't great at punching aggressively, but if something gets into melee with them, especially if it's Wookiees who don't save for anything, they can punch back. So
yeah, they're not terrible.
Especially with 2 aims and dragoning scopes.
Yep. The original version of that tactician was a bit silly.
Dumb.
Yeah.
Good, but dumb.
Yeah. So yeah, even taking something that is like popular and then just taking your own twist on it,
yep.
I think can be potentially great.
Yeah, I think look at Blizzard, like pre-nerf. There was like 3 to 4 different, I would say, viable configurations of that list.
Yep.
They were not all like the meta super good one, but I'm pretty sure I played at least 3 against three different versions of it at Worlds.
There weren't that many upgrade for upgrade copies of each other Blizzard lists.
Yeah.
As in like the Rexstar meta days where there was like 2 lists, like it was like Arcstar and Rexstar, and down to the upgrade, they were all identical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and those lists built themselves. I don't know.
they really did.
That part of that was I always try to lean into the like Legion list. You can often do one thing, right? And if you're gonna start doing that one thing, fully do that thing. Don't half-ass 2 things. Full-ass one thing. And part of that is like there's certain units you add to a list, and they start you down a path of what that list wants to do. And if you don't follow that path to its natural conclusion, you're making a subpar list. And that's what those Rexstar lists were, right? You add Rex, well, now you're starting to clone gun line, and you just kind of got and every clone you add is just more reason to take more clones. So
yep.
I do think that's like that's kind of a unique insight there. I think like if you put, for instance, a sniper in your list, right? Your list is almost intrinsically going to be more defensive at that juncture, as opposed to like I'm putting speeder bikes in my list. My list is going to be more aggressive at that point, right?
Yeah.
Your battle deck is completely different. Like just adding one unit on one side or the other, kind of just adding one sniper team to your list changes a lot about it. It's not just a pass activation. It's a vulnerability that you've added into your list, right? And one that can disappear very quickly against specific threats. What's up? Blizzard.
Well, lots of things really.
Sure.
Blizzard, Iden,
But-
Cassian.
I mean, even
Echo.
Leia.
Leia.
Leia at this point is like a real threat to. I mean, she used to be too, but you know.
But yeah, the idea of you're started down a path as soon as you add like that first unit you add starts you on a path, and it's real. And if you're just putting in random things and willy-nilly around the path, you're just making subpar lists in general.
It's important to kind of commit to the concept that you're going for.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like don't just add a one-off speeder bike or one-off sniper strike team if it doesn't fit with what the rest of your list is trying to do. And you see, and look, I did this when I first started playing. You see people do this a lot where they're like, I just want to take all the cool things. You know, I like speeder bikes, I like snipers, I like stormtroopers, I like e-webs, and they just take like this smorgasbord of units that don't really function in a cohesive way. And regardless of whether you're net listing or coming up with your own list concept and working from that, it's always important to like figure out what your list is trying to do and then make sure that everything you're taking works towards that goal. And Mike, your 501st example is a great one in that regard, because your list is essentially it's the ARC troopers primarily, right?
Yes.
So then it's like, well, how do I best support these ARC troopers? Well, I need to keep them alive. So that's what Anakin is for.
Yep.
And the medics, right?
The medics are such a game changer.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you got through all this defensive tech, and then I rolled some saves, lost a model. I'm gonna put it back.
Yeah.
Like you did a lot of work. And the amount of games where my opponent has gone to great strides and lengths to just take a model off the table on turn 1 and 2, and then it just goes right back. And the look of just despair is palpable, you know?
Mm-hmm. I mean, even in our game, I did very little damage to your list until Vader got in there.
Yeah, until Force Choke messed me up.
It was Force Choke and the lightsaber, but you're right.
I feel like I was in a playable position if Force Choke was what it is now.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to think back. I don't think that I specifically Force Choked a heavy all in our game.
You didn't.
It was mostly just used to kill ARC troopers instead of having to shoot them.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think he killed like 3 to 4 ARC troopers that way.
I was definitely winning
ARC troopers.
I was definitely winning the gunfight.
Oh yeah.
Like, and it wasn't real close in that junction. Until the point Vader got in there, and then it was just over because that's what he does.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the difference there is you're just not going to see Force Choke as much. Like it's in our game, I don't think that the new version of Force Choke would have made a difference specifically.
No, probably not. I definitely was respecting it like it would have, though.
Right. That's
is the main thing. I would have played that game, I think, very differently if I knew you couldn't Force Choke my heavies.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
I had to basically run around you in like a semicircle to try and make it so it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yep. And I probably would have just like and I, not to like go all tangent, but like just the fact that this thing doesn't exist changes in its previous form, changes how you play the game against the units that could take it. You are punished a lot less now against those units.
Yeah, you don't have to like dilly-dally around or dance around them as much as you might have previously. You can kind of just get in there and, you know, they might kill some stuff with their lightsaber, I guess, but that's not going to be inherently scary in the same way. So,
yeah. And when you're sharing dodge tokens and stuff, lightsabers are significantly less scary.
I mean, you know, Vader would be likely, like, if you got enough. Yeah, I think it's extremely reasonable in like really any clone list, not just the 501st list, but to have like 2 to 3 dodge tokens floating around that you can just kind of share, and then Vader swings and kills 2 clone models, and you're like, all right.
Okay.
I mean, you basically always have one available at minimum.
Yeah.
Which any lightsaber, just taking one off the top of it is big.
Yeah, it goes from losing a unit to not losing a unit,
Right.
right? which is huge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Man, you guys are talking me into playing clones. I already submitted a list for Lone Star.
Clones are
Man,
fun.
they're so
I know
good.
they are, and I have.
And let me tell you why you should join the Church of the 501st. Bistan's got a church.
Okay,
we
let's
need
hear
we
it.
need to talk about things because people want to hear it, because I have not heard the end of it. I've gotten so many DMs over the last week about, Mike, you didn't tell us about your 501st. I'm
All right,
like,
preach,
why you
preach,
think it's
preach to
amazing?
me.
Okay, so Tim, I think you can probably relate to some of the problems I had been having before I started playing 501st. I've been playing a lot of clones. I've been playing a lot of Anakin Padme. It felt on the surface like probably the best thing we could be doing is to lean into the exemplar shenanigans. And in fairness, Anakin still has exemplar, but Padme, obviously you can't take Padme in a 501st list, right? And Tim, I took a variant of your list that you played at LVO to Worlds with the situational awareness shenanigans and really turning the dodge tokens up to 11, right? The one thing that really destroyed me in just about every game, I always was like, I really only can effectively fight at range 3. And that's it. And there are so many good units in so many different lists. In Blizzard Force, you got, the Bombard, you got ATSTs if they have them. The speeder bikes are not really range 3. They're just, they are, but they aren't. They dart in, they shoot you, they dart back out.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're like, well, you're not a range 3 anymore. Crap, right? We've got Iden, Pikes can pretty effectively fight at range 4. And I found in all these mashups that I'm down on activations. I don't think if you're playing an 8 to 9 activation clone list, I don't think you can afford to be outranged. I really feel that way at this point. That's not to say you can't win games, because you definitely can. Tim and I have won a ton.
And one you mentioned to me at LVO too is you did not like DC 15s at all. Then we play our game and you respect them a little bit more. And the DC 15s in my list, part of the reason they're there is they're able to help close that range 4-3 gap. Because
sure.
One, I can use the captains to close range 3, but also they're pretty effective at range 4.
Yep.
So they give me, if you want to fight a range 4, I at least can fight you. I probably still lose the range 4 gunfight, but I'm able to fight that fight while still getting to range 3.
Yeah. And that was one thing in our game that I was like, man, these DC-15s are kind of a pain in the butt. But one of the things that the ARC troopers give you that I think
Yes.
I've sort of landed on no other unit in the game really does the same way is that they're just hyper efficient at every engagement range. Yep. They're like, okay, we need to fight a range 5 fight. Great, let's do it. Let's have it out. We'll be the only shots taken, and we're going to be more efficient than whenever they're doing, because if they've got snipers, we've got barrier, and if they have snipers, they don't, because they're playing like Iden or Cassian. Right. And then it's like, okay, we're playing a range 3 game. Well, we've got 5 units that are all just chucking 10 dice, 3 of which have Pierce and Sharpshooter. They do everything so incredibly efficiently. And as a competitive player, what I enjoy about it, and the reason I think it is so amazing, is that the flexibility that it affords you from where you start on turn 0, you can literally come up with a completely different game plan for every game you play. I've played bombing run with that list so many times, and it has been easy.
That's because of the range advantage.
ranged advantage, all your units are courage too. You can't,
and
you don't
tactical,
get,
so
and
move, shoot,
tactical.
move, shoot.
You move, shoot. And it's like, you can cross the board pretty fast when you're doing that, turns out. And if
Yeah.
you're toilet bowling, you can do that while firing your snipers. And it plays all the objectives, it wins the range game, and that's the other thing it does for clones. Normal clone gun lines can't play bombing run. I mean, they can,
Nope.
but they don't want
Nope.
to.
Not well.
But
Yeah.
the token bark is not bad. I've actually come to respect the token bark. It allows you to get out of a lot of situations that are actually horrible for you. Disarray, great. I'm gonna go put this thing I don't care about in the corner, and it's just gonna do donuts over there. Like,
yep.
In Tim, it was great, kind of in our game.
That was one of the things that won you the game.
Yep, I just play X-Wing with it. It's just a blocker. I've won like probably a dozen games off blocking with that bark at this point, and it's something that nobody even thinks of because it's 3 moves away.
Barks consistently, like the naked barks consistently, and this happened the one game I lost at Worlds, was the same thing. I completely forgot how fast barks can move. They're so fast. 3 speeds, 3 moves of them is wicked fast.
It's like half the board.
It's way faster than a normal speeder bike because their base is like twice the size. I could get into like very specific use cases on a lot of this stuff. We fundamentally don't have 12 hours. I'm contemplating doing like a video series or something. We'll see. No promises. Don't bug me about that. Like, where's the 501st video?
Where's the 501st videos? But really, it's kind of like an amalgamation of all of these things that add up to being like a hyper flexible. It feels like you're playing like a blue deck in Magic, where like you just have counterspell and you just get to decide what the game is, and your opponent kind of has to react to that and they have to engage into you. They don't have a choice. You are gonna set the tone for the game, whether you're using their deck or yours. You can flex to all of their objectives. And I think, there was let's talk about the command cards.
the hardest to pick command hand probably ever.
I actually think it was that a joke?
The 2 pips are very, very well. You don't have Rex. That's fair.
Yeah, I don't think it's close. It's not close.
Yeah, that's fair. Once Rex is out of, like, if it's a Rex list, then it's different. But I remember having a discussion with someone at a 501st Rex list, and like, what do you take as a 2 pips? Oh,
yeah, it gets a lot harder if you're playing.
And with Anakin, it's easy. Yes.
Yeah,
it's easy. It's easier. You're still leaving a good 2 pip on the table.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You are. But your 2 pips are still the best cards in your command hand, I think. So I take Anakin's 2. The other 2 pip is lead from the front, which we'll talk about in a sec. Ambush, Anakin's 1. Leaders of the 501st, which apparently you can't order leaders of the 501st with, which is great. That's cool. Thanks for that.
Yep.
Those command cards, man. Anyway,
they're not bad. I want to be very clear.
They're not bad. They could be like actually synergistic with some super minor tweaks.
So I actually think they're very synergistic.
Okay. I
think that there are definitely the 3 pip specifically has like pretty glaring limitation in that you can't give an order to Anakin.
Well, that's obviously what I mean. Like, that's like a super simple, like, why can't you give an order to Anakin on a card that he's featured on?
I'm with you there. However, both leaders and lead from the front are all-stars. I think they're one of the bigger reasons to play 501st. Both of them have gotten me out of lead from the front. I know people complain about like it's the within clause, right?
Yeah.
It's not a big deal at all. I'm over being grumpy about it. It's worse than
but it's playable.
And more importantly, once you've played 501st like 2 or 3 times, you don't worry about it anymore because they're just always within 1 of Anakin. Like that's just,
your whole army just moves around in like a range 1 radius circle, basically.
And the thing about it is that it's fine because I have never put a Force user out in the open so often, except with this list. I will just put Anakin out there. I'll be like, here you go. Here he is. Here's a platter. Step up, shoot him.
You never want to shoot Anakin.
I dare you.
It's like Gem So is just like, no, I don't want to do that. That's
not when you're playing an attrition game where they've got medics, and every time you shoot their Jedi, you just lose a guy.
Right. And then they heal it back with the medic.
And then they just heal it back. You know, but more importantly, if you're shooting Anakin, everything's within 1 of him basically at all times, which means if you're shooting him, everything is in range to shoot you.
Yep.
Right. Like you're stepping into the mess that is, which lead from the front is a busted card. It is busted.
The text effect is very strong.
It is insanely strong, particularly with clones. It basically makes you invulnerable to the first shot your opponent's going to take that turn because you're triggering defend on Anakin with it. You've got barrier up, or you should have barrier up. You're putting 2 to 3 more dodge tokens down. It makes you completely invulnerable to the first shot, and it lets the first shot you take be extremely lethal because you're going to have probably 2 amp tokens. Which when we talk about competitive Legion, I don't know how often you guys have talked about it recently. Tempo is like a big thing, particularly in like the turns 2 to 4 gunfight that happens in most Legion games where, you know, you're swinging back and forth at range 3, whether that happens on turn 2 or, you know, turn 4 or whatever. When that fight opens, lead from the front is a busted card. Anyhow, leaders of the 501st. Turns out when you get flawed, that's a great card to play.
Yep.
No, why is that specifically for those that are unfamiliar with what it does and why that's relevant for them?
Sure. Sorry. I'm definitely like probably a little bit in jargon land here. So 501st only allows you to, leaders of the 501st is a card that gives all of your units, it's a permanent card. It's the 4th one you get in this list because permanent cards are cool and fun. And it gives all of your units at range 2 of Anakin or Rex, who's not on the list, indomitable. So they roll for the rest of the game.
Red dice.
The red dice when they rally.
Yep. Which
and they're all courage 2. So basically, it basically makes you immune to panic and probably immune to suppression for the most part.
Yep.
So if you've got like 5 suppression, sometimes you can still be suppressed, but it's rare. But the reason that this is specifically good on Anakin's flawed turn is because, well, when you get flawed with Anakin, that means that you can't give Anakin an order anyways. What's the best thing to be doing at that point? Throw in a bunch of core and special forces tokens down to make it easier to pull Anakin out of your bag.
Yep.
And you also get a pretty cool effect on top of it. It definitely is awkward if you don't get flawed, but in those games, I generally don't play it. But
it feels like a bonus card in 501st.
I will say it was amazing in the finals game at Top Deck. Again, Top Deck. We were playing hostage exchange, and my opponent very clearly had never played against 501st before, and he decided that the way he was going to win this game was to panic my hostage.
Which by definition would be, to start with, a courage 3 hostage. So you're already looking at a target number of 6.
6.
Yeah. Okay.
And in fairness, the turn before I played leaders of the 501st, at the end of the turn, there was 8 suppression on the hostage unit.
Okay.
So he was like feeling pretty good about it. And then I played leaders and they moved away. And it wasn't, I mean, we only got 1 move because he had 8 suppression tokens. Right.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to kill things against 501st list. So he couldn't. I mean, I had so much suppression because he couldn't kill the unit.
Yeah. That's usually when something has 8 suppression. That's usually why.
Yeah,
is because the thing has been shot a lot and just not died.
Yep.
yeah. And it definitely was a game winner. Not close. I was, if I had panicked, if I didn't have that card, that unit probably almost certainly panics.
Indomitable is real good.
Indomitable is it's yeah. And again, I think that kind of goes back to like if you're in the middle of a game where you need to make sure that your units aren't suppressed to get the objectives done, that card turns into a game winner. It's giving up a dodge token. It's actually not that important to have an order on Anakin other than the dodge token. In this list I found. Anakin is pretty timing neutral overall.
His reliable means that getting him a dodge token is not critical.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wish that I had more arcs painted.
I mean, in fairness, you did paint a lot. You can borrow mine if you want. It's probably the least I can do.
I guess that is true. I could do that. I will probably end up playing what I've already submitted, but we'll see.
Aw, boo. Anyway.
Lame.
So now that we've talked about 501st for a while,
Yeah, it was a lot of 501st. Go for it.
the Republic. I mean, I still have my world's list. That got 5 points cheaper. Blah blah blah. As soon as Cody came out, I was like, time to make Cody. Let's see what Cody can do. And one of the things I hear a lot of is people go, his command cards are terrible.
They are.
Which I'm not. Yeah,
I wouldn't say they're terrible. They're just not very good.
They're meh. But
Yeah.
First off, a lot of people said before his command cards were revealed that he's good before his command cards even come out.
Yep, that's fair.
He is. If he didn't have any command cards, he's good. But and the thing I look at his command cards as his 1 and 3 pip let you observe twice. And his 1 pip maybe gives you an extra impact every once in a while. And his 2 pip is a 2 pip that I think I've gotten the effect off once, but it's not something you go after. If you're chasing the 2 pip, I think you're doing Cody wrong. I honestly, for most of the games I've played, could just run push instead of his 2 pip, but I find myself playing standing orders with Cody a lot. So taking his 2 pip for the odd time that it's like a little bit of a threat, great, whatever.
Are you playing Boyle?
Nope.
Yeah, I think the 2 blip is way better with Boyle.
2 pip is way better with Boyle. So the list that I've come to, we'll talk about a list. Are you gonna pull up the thing?
I'm working on it.
Okay, cool. There we go.
Nope.
Get those
I got my air speeders toggled.
Get those
I was
air
getting
speeders
ready
out of
earlier. Getting ready earlier. All right,
So-
I'm here.
This list is by no means like final, but I have tinkered it with a little bit, played a little bit, and I do like it. We got Cody. We got aggressive tactics on Cody.
Aggressive tactics, old school. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Clone Commander.
So this is going to be a straight clone list. This is
Gonna be so
okay.
because remember what I was talking about. Once you pick a unit, you're down a road.
Yeah, absolutely.
I see a lot.
Cody is one of those units.
Well, he is a long range clone unit. I see a lot of people putting Obi-Wan, which I mean it's thematic. If you want to play that, no problem. But he harkens back to the old school clone list because he's a long range clone fire support platform, right? That's what he is. I honestly treat him a lot like Busk or just like an artillery piece. Anyway, so that's his deal. Clone Commander put lead by example on Clone Commander.
Lead by example.
Because you get shot a lot and it builds up the suppression. Then this one is the weird one. This is honestly an homage to just what I like. Phase 1 with a DC 15 and Clone Captain. No training, doesn't fit.
I have a special attachment to that setup too. Honestly.
Also, I was going through my cards today. Kyle, I'm pretty sure I've still got your Clone Captain from Worlds. I have to give it back to you. Anyways,
Okay.
Just FYI if you need it.
I still have your Ion Trooper.
I don't. Do you? Okay. All right. I don't think you do. I think I have it. But anyways, let's.
Oh, really? Okay.
Or are you talking about the model?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, probably the model. I definitely have the card. Anyways.
Okay. Yeah.
Speaking of tangents, phase 1 with 5s and a medic.
Can we just go back to the DC 15 real quick? If that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about the captain. So I feel like I like pretty much refuse to play phase ones without captains. How do you feel about
Yeah.
that?
That is, I at this point with clones refuse to play any unit that is not fit courage 2 or have a way to deal with suppression.
They're just so expensive to not be able to do
They're
that.
just so expensive. And
Yeah.
also because you fight effectively at range 3, you need a way to close range 3.
Yep.
And that's often a move shoot. So you need to be able to do that when you need to do that. Put a medic on the 5s unit.
Okay. Yeah, actually that's like a really good point as far as like I was talking earlier about the like whole like range 3 disadvantage. That's really the reason that that is such a big deal.
Yeah.
Is that the suppression is huge.
Yep. Then a phase 1 with RPS 6 and a recon.
I think
cheeky.
I think the RPS is the one exception to the phase 1 without a captain.
Yes. Oh yeah, because that's your fire sport platform.
No,
Even
doubt.
if they don't have armor, the RPS is a great fire sport option.
Yep.
Like a fair number of dice with also good range, with also good like color, like a rainbow. Adding a rainbow to any of your like long range pools is great. Phase 2 with Z6 and a medic.
My favorite setup. This is my default. If a phase 2 is going in my list, this is the default now.
Yeah, and then another phase 2 with a mortar and a medic.
Ooh. Mortar. I like the mortar a lot less.
The more. And then an echo squad.
Man, there's a lot of medics in this list.
3 of them, yeah.
Clone medics are really good. I don't know if everybody's gotten the memo, but
and then it's a bark speeder with the RPS. And then there's 2 options for the comms upgrade. You either put long range comm link or LTA, link target array. And it really depends on if you want to play your bark as a part of your gun line, which it often does, or just have a like token bark that can go do whatever it wants.
That's interesting. I definitely in all my Cody lists, this slot has been comms relay, and it hasn't been particularly close.
So I see that. So the reason I don't have comms relay is because a bark with aggressive tactics that always has a surge token, pretty hard to kill, especially in one shot.
I guess my bark has Anakin's tokens, so I guess it's not a problem.
Yeah. I also have I have a clone commander in 5s. I don't need more orders on clones generally.
That's fair. That's fair.
Right. I'm investing into the orders elsewhere. Right. If I didn't have 5s / clone commander, it would be a comm relay. So right now I have the long range comm link on it, but it really could be LTA or long range, whatever. They're pretty interchangeable and it's really list style. But yeah, so for especially people who are listening who that took forever, it's Cody with AT, clone commander with lead by example, phase 1s with DC 15 and captain, phase 1s with 5s and clone medic, phase 1s with RPS 6, recon intel, phase 2s with Z6 medic, phase 2s with mortar medic, arc trooper with echo, and or strike team with echo, and then a bark speeder with RPS and long range or LTA. So spice to taste. So yeah, and then the command cards build themselves because it's just ambush, bring it down, air support, have I let you down, command or combined arms, and attack of the clones. It's not complicated. It's all the cards that make sense.
Yeah.
But this list, the firepower it can output is pretty immense. And especially now with choke, choke was a huge threat to this list.
It's over here like screw all these clone players.
I think it was healthy for the game to have a thing that bypassed all this defense. That's a topic for another.
Yeah. One of the things that has sort of added to this list, but also other lists, the recon intel on like the unit you want to use as your fire sport, real good.
Yep, I agree with that.
Right, like that RPS squad in this unit or this list, like there's limited games where it's never activated or it's activated like once on the last turn. So recon intelling it so that you can just get into position to fire sport, and especially because it is a range 4, like both Cody and Echo are great, like long range shots. Being able to slingshot that RPS forward so that you can throw either Cody's pool with another rainbow or Echo with another rainbow, it's great.
Yeah, I also
Okay.
I don't do you ever use that unit as a token battery? I definitely like will use the RPS.
If they activate, like when they activate, it's I mean, I off like depending on situation of course, but like aim dodge, or sometimes it'll be an aim / dodge and then a shot at range 4 for suppression or whatever. Yeah. Changes the list because you mentioned Boyle. Boyle would be great for this list. It's just in my head, I don't want to put Boyle on a squad that has a heavy weapon. What I've been
I'm
seeing
with
more
you.
of, yeah, I have seen more of people putting Boyle onto a rocket squad,
Yep.
which I think is defensible, especially like right, especially if you just want that rocket to only be fire sporting with just the rocket, right? And then Boyle gives you your recon intel anyway. I mean, you could put recon intel as well, have scout 2, but you probably don't need scout 2.
Yeah.
So you could just put the recon intel on something else, probably the mortar, to be honest with you. And then you got same idea, but now you have Boyle, which makes Cody's 2-pip suddenly a tactic instead of just a like, whatever.
It's a
And
more
also,
reasonable magic
yeah,
person slang.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I have found that the one time the 2-pip was useful was so the tactic I have not developed but found to be good with Cody is using 3 and 1 pips to last first with him. So you're sticking at a line sight, you move to range 3, observe, shoot. Next turn, observe, shoot, move. And then using his 3 and 1 pips, one of the turns you move, double observe, shoot. And then next turn you play his 1 pip, double observe, shoot, move. And Cody basically in my head should never fire without a fire sport. Every shot he takes should have a fire sport. Like anytime he shoots, it should be a unit gone.
Interesting.
And then anyway, that's how I've been playing him anyway.
That's fair.
And his 2-pip is a bit of a like depending, if your opponent doesn't have a unit currently threatening Cody that could take him off the board, but they like they have snipers aimed at him or a couple like little tiny squads or whatever that are aimed at him, but you want to go do something else, you can play Cody's 2-pip so that they're really not wanting to shoot him, and you can sort of focus your activations elsewhere and then move him when you need to. It's sort of that way to like, if you're going to do a wound to me, well, I'll probably do a wound back, right? So, but I don't ever like hang Cody out on to play for the 2-pip. It's just a like, if I know Cody's going to survive anyway, well, I might as well just play the 2-pip, because if you want to shoot him, great, I'll shoot you back. But I don't care if you shoot him at this point. So, yeah. But yeah, and like Cody, like I also find like his direct leans you into having want to have one vehicle. I don't think he wants to have more than one vehicle.
Yeah,
and
I think that's a trap.
Yeah. And I also think that vehicle really could be any of the GAR vehicles. Like you can build a decent Cody list with any of the GAR vehicles. Yeah, I mean, like the Fluttercraft with link target. Like if you are wanting to put the effort into making Fluttercraft, like learn how to play Fluttercraft properly, put an LTA on it, make sure it always has an order, and like that's a good gun if you can always have a name.
Yeah,
So-
no, this definitely looks very similar to some Fluttercraft lists I've seen. Even like pre-Cody. And this kind of feels like it just leans into that a little bit better for sure.
Yep. So yeah, I just like the bark because it's like rarely gets one-shotted, especially with AT.
It's a clone squad.
Exactly. I'm often, or most of the time, is basically running it as another core unit that charges a hit. So like I have Cody, the bark, and then Echo to a certain degree are all sort of my like fire support starter possibilities. Cody always shoots at the fire support. The bark is sort of my secondary if I need 2 fire sports, which I rarely do, but if I need that. And then Echo is my like if I want to be doing long range fire sports, well, I have Cody and Echo to start them, and then the Mortar and the RPS and the DC-15 can all support a long range fire support. So
Chris.
what
So
wanna
the only real weakness to this list is, I guess, if some kind of crazy aggro melee unit gets in there.
Tough to get them
Yeah.
out. Tough to get
Yeah.
them out.
I mean, you're basically hoping to withdraw at a relevant time.
Yep.
And shoot them, or just hope that you have enough clones that the clones can punch them or wear them down.
Yeah, I mean, really the hope is like I'm hoping to get, one shot, like one big shot into whatever force user comes in, which is fairly reasonable, right?
Mhm.
Do
Yep.
right? Most force users are 6 or 7 health. Do like 2 or 3 or 4 on the way in, and then clone units are pretty good at punching things to death because you can give them aims, give them surges, and
Give them
then just
dodges,
start
yep.
punching.
Mhm.
Yeah, dodges keep them alive, and then some medics, but they're pretty good at just punching back. Because like especially like most of these squads are 6 guys. So if you were using them as bubble wrap, well, that's 6 black, basically surging to hit with an aim, if not 2 aims.
Yep.
So
Definitely very
That's-
reasonable.
so that's, I mean, yeah, like the punch a force user to death, like I mean, as long as they have been dealt a third to half damage on the way in, like they're probably gonna like they have a ticking clock once they're in my lines, right? They're probably 2 turns, pretty reasonably, they'll be gone. So now that often that's enough for force users to win a game. Don't get me wrong, but they do like an aggro force.
I think that's less true than it used to be.
Yes, with the choke, like my big fear before the choke change was Darth Vader gets in, Darth Vader wins.
Yeah.
Now it's a playable position, as Mike put it earlier.
Yeah. It's definitely it's more playable at least.
Although even under old choke, you got 3 medics in this list.
Yes.
So you choke a heavy, you bring it back with a medic.
Yep.
3 times, and like if being able to weather 3 chokes just purely with medics is.
I have found that that's not actually that's like a nice optimistic viewpoint of how the medics will work out. In that generally the entry is generally their last activation. You've already gone with your medics because you're 8 or 9. So whatever their first choke, you're not putting back on the table, which is often the most meaningful choke.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep.
So
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah, it's not a perfect counter.
No.
You
I just like I see people
anymore. Obviously,
people tout the clone medic is like the answer to force choke, and don't get me wrong, it's definitely good at solving the problem, but it's not a catch-all for sure.
It helps limit the possibilities. I mean, old choke is dead, but like especially like if Vader implacable,
Yeah,
it was really helpful to like Vader often will end up going early in the turn then, so it often was good to put a 1 back then. But
you don't have to worry about it anymore.
nope, who cares? It's fine.
it is fine.
Yeah.
I
So,
feel
yeah,
like, are we just gonna dance around it the whole time, or are we actually gonna get into this?
I don't want to, simply because it is 10:50 Eastern time.
Oh, okay.
Ugh, it's only 9:52 Central. It's fine.
I was gonna posit that we could brew our own list here on cast, but I guess what you're saying is we don't have the time to do that.
Remember when he said he had 3 kids earlier?
So interestingly, my kids are actually not here, but I do need to get on a plane tomorrow morning.
You're fine. You're fine. I actually, with the screen sharing thing up, I actually can't see what time it is, so I'm kind of
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I hate to be like the old man. We're gonna go to bed, but
It is funny being a younger member of this community. There are certainly games at conventions that I have had an edge at just because someone was tired in the morning.
I'm actually less tired in the morning than I used to be. I've kind of just gotten used to like not ever sleeping. under normal circumstances, and then I go to a convention and I have a room to myself with no distractions, and I actually get like 8 to 9 hours of sleep, and I'm like,
Oh, this is nice.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
convincing Kyle to come out and have fun is a no-go.
That's not true.
He comes out and has fun. I will
Hell,
say
10 o'clock.
I do
me
empathize
that.
with that. My first game of every tournament is my worst generally.
Same.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep.
I definitely need some coffee, but
Yeah.
I lost my first game at LVO this year.
Mhm.
I mean, often though, that's depending on the tournament setup. That's like the game you can lose.
Yeah.
With some of the more like double elimination-esque formats we've been running.
Yeah.
lately.
LVO and Worlds were both like that, where you could
Not-
lose on
not-
day one.
Not LVO next year though.
Really?
Well, it's the 6-game Swiss, right?
Oh, interesting.
I mean, I think you still have a shot at 5-1 of advancing, but like, especially if you lose your first game, well, then your SOS is not
Pretty
as
bad.
good.
Yeah. Interesting. I didn't know that. Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, no, LVO, the format of LVO has changed. As far as I know, I won't be there this year, so I'm.
Me neither. I decided to sit this one out because I already had
I-
an invite.
I'm not even deciding. It has been decided for me because I am running an engineering competition that weekend.
Nice.
That
Will
sounds
you
pretty
be
fun.
brewing some engineering stuff?
Well, I have to brew the entire, well, not the entire competition. Hopefully I'll have competition leads, but we'll have 300 people from all over Western Canada making
Wow.
engineering stuff.
So that's, to be clear, everyone in Western Canada, right?
Most everybody. I mean,
There are 5 million people in Western Canada
okay, all right.
ish,
Ish.
because there's there'll be more than that. There's 1.2 in Manitoba, like
Geography
probably like-
lesson starts here.
probably like 7 or 8 million in Western Canada? Question mark.
okay.
Yeah, which it is hilarious. Like my province, Manitoba, there's a city and then the rest of the province, and the province is the size of, what's a good American analogous, Montana maybe, but it's like 1.2 million in the whole province, so it's bigger than Montana, but about 800,000 in the city proper, 1 million in the metro area.
Here we go. Screen share. The benefits of screen share.
Yeah,
Right.
there's Manitoba.
That's
There
pretty
you go.
big.
That is much bigger than Montana.
That's significantly bigger.
Well,
than
it is a Mercator. It is a Mercator projection. Remember, So
That's
it-
true.
so it's not
Yeah.
quite as crazy as it looks.
Okay, sure.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But it's
But,
definitely bigger than Montana.
It's also the fact that it's like 90% of Canadians live within 100 kilometers of the American border, 60 miles.
Makes sense. I mean, you can see that with just like looking at the roads. You know?
Yeah.
There is one highway that goes across Canada, and it is called the
Yeah.
Trans-Canada Highway.
There you go.
Nice.
Perfect.
Nice.
Um,
So, yeah.
All right. Geography lesson.
So I gotta have
Yeah.
a bone to pick, actually. This is Western Canada. I'm sorry.
So
That looks like the middle to me.
Winnipeg is basically the middle.
Okay.
Okay.
The thing is Toronto and Ottawa are the center of the universe in Canada. So there's quote. So how it works in Canada is Ontario is central, and Quebec is kind of central, and then Eastern Canada is like Newfoundland, like the Maritimes, and then Western Canada is all 4 prairie provinces and the territories.
It's kind of like how in Illinois, everything south of Chicago is Southern Illinois. Even though Chicago is like in the very northern part of the state.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I grew up in Chicago and my wife grew up in central Illinois, which is the middle of the state. And I would always say that she was from Southern Illinois, which would annoy the crap out of her because everything south Chicago and Illinois is Southern Illinois. So
Yeah.
there
Like
you go.
I live within like, I don't know, it's like 45 minutes of like, there's a plaque at like, this is the central latitude marker of Canada.
Mhm.
And it's like, but I'm Western Canada, even though I'm actually east of that line.
Yep, there you go. I
Yeah.
thought Winnipeg was further north in my head. I don't know.
Nope. Nope.
Interesting. All right, good to know.
This geography lesson
It's-
brought to you by the
Wait,
Notorious Scoundrels.
Yeah.
Winnipeg is a 16-hour drive from Chicago. So it's not that bad.
Yeah, that sounds much closer than I thought it was, honestly.
Yeah, it's basically 8 hours directly north of Minneapolis.
Okay.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
And then when it takes 24 hours to get to Toronto or 24 hours to get to Vancouver.
So it takes 48 hours to drive across Canada, basically.
Oh no, that Vancouver to Toronto is like not even 2/3.
Oh, Toronto. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking Montreal. Okay. So it takes longer than 48 hours to get across Canada.
It's like 80 hours or something to go all the way from one to the other.
Okay. All right.
Canada's pretty big.
Canada's very big. Yeah.
Good old geography lessons.
All right. Well, you have fun with all those engineering students on LVO weekend.
I will, or there'll be troublemakers and I'll have to deal with it, but whatever.
I have a hard time picturing you like disciplining troublemakers instead of just being like
I
like hey, can I have one of those? You know?
I'll have to do my best.
There you go.
I often influence people to make good decisions by joining in those better than their terrible decisions.
I'm picturing you like Will Ferrell from Old School. You know, where it's- all right. Well, we didn't go as off the rails as I thought we would.
At the end there.
We just had a geography lesson on Canada. I think we were successfully off the rails.
That's fair. But it took us almost 2 hours to get there.
There you go.
All right, hour and a half ish. All right. Well, we are the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
I'm Mike.
I'm Timbo reporting from Central/Western Canada.
Stay fresh, cheese bags. I'm doing it right.
Sweet.
I'm gonna try and leave gaps for drops for Jay. So
Okay.
um
What is our main topic, Kyle?
Mike, that was supposed to be space for a drop.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jay. I'm sorry. See, second time back. I'm already ruining things. Here, insert drop here.